Good morning, and let me call the hearing to order. The committee meets today to consider the nominations of Mr. John Sherman to be Chief Information Officer of the Department of Defense, Mr. Ashish Vazirani to be Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, and Ms. Carrie Ritchie to be General Counsel of the Department of the Army. I thank the nominees for their long careers of service to the United States and their willingness to assume these important responsibilities. I would also like to welcome the family members who are with us today. Mr. Sherman, I welcome your wife, Liz, daughter, Savannah, and son, Brad. Mr. Varashani, I welcome your wife, Deborah. And Ms. Ritchie, I welcome your brother, Dr. John, and daughter, Maria. I had to get the doctor in there. Mr. Sherman, you are nominated to be Chief Information Officer of the Department of Defense. The CIO is the principal advisor to the Secretary of Defense for a broad range of information technology issues, including national security systems and information resource management. I would note your long record of distinguished public service, including your tenure as the CIO for the intelligence community. The Defense Department is struggling with all aspects of IT, which is critical to defense systems and the operations of the department as an effective enterprise. We have seen continuous cybersecurity failures in the face of ever-increasing threats, as well as failures in acquisition programs ranging from the Jedi cloud computing effort to software failures on the F-35 to the recent termination of the Navy's contract writing system program. At the same time, the Defense Department is struggling to hire IT professionals to work in software development, cybersecurity, IT operations, and IT acquisition. Furthermore, the IT industrial base, especially the important hardware that runs these systems, like microelectronics and printed circuit boards, are increasingly moving offshore and will not remain trusted parts of the defense supply chain. I look forward to hearing how you will address these challenges if you are confirmed. Mr. Vazirani, you are nominated to be Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. If confirmed, you will assist the United Undersecretary in addressing many challenges for the department, including first and foremost, ensuring that our military has adequate numbers of ready and trained service members of sufficiently high character and talent to meet our defense objectives. You will be responsible for assisting the Undersecretary in military and civilian personnel policy, military family and child care programs, the Defense Department-run school system, and working with the military services to ensure the health and welfare of the force. As the former CEO of the National Military Family Association and as a Navy veteran, I would ask that you share what military family issues you believe need to be addressed most and what recommendations you have to improve readiness. In addition, the challenge of sexual harassment and sexual assault in the military has eroded trust and faith in leaders' ability to effectively address this issue. I would ask that you share your plans for addressing this problem. Ms. Ritchie, you are nominated to be General Counsel of the Department of the Army. This position has a broad scope of responsibilities, including serving as legal advisor to the Secretary of the Army, Chief Legal Officer of the Department of the Army, and coordinating legal and policy positions Army-wide. Your extensive legal career in the Army, including prior service in the Army General Counsel's office while on active duty, should serve you well. There are a number of important duties that will require your attention within the department. It will be your responsibility to assist the Secretary of the Army in addressing extremism in the military and implementing the Independent Review Commission's recommendations regarding prevention and response to sexual assault. As a member of the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee yourself, I would ask that you share how you plan to use the information you've gained to assist the Army in addressing sexual assault. Thank you again to our nominees. I look forward to your testimonies. Now let me recognize the ranking member, Senator Inhofe. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to our witnesses for being here. I enjoyed the opportunity to personally meet them. We're very fortunate to have this group here with us this morning. As this committee has heard again and again from the military and the civilian officials, every threat we face continues to worsen our situation since the last National Defense Strategy came out in 2018. And that's the book that we continue to keep here and try to use this as our pattern as we have in the past. I certainly hope that the next National Defense Strategy will acknowledge the success of this in the past and give us the right direction for the future. If we want to have any hope of keeping pace, we've got to achieve real growth in defense spending. I'm very worried that the inflation next year will not only cut our troops' pay, but will also significantly delay the pace of our modernization efforts. We've seen the shocking pace of Chinese military modernization, from missiles to ships and now nuclear expansion and hypersonic strike weapons. You know, we've been hearing about this for a long time. Now we've seen it. It's happening. It's a reality. Some of the most difficult challenges are the less obvious ones, but just as important. In particular, the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence told us, quote, China, and this is a quote, China possesses the might, talent, and ambition to surpass the United States as the world's leader in AI in the next decade if current trends do not change. That's a shocker. That's something that we're not used to in this country. A recognition that we are not number one in everything. You know, when we talk to people, we go back to our districts and talk to people on the ground, the real people that are paying for all this fun we're having up here. They're the ones that realize that are starting to realize the problems that we're having now that are really unprecedented. So I'm very much concerned about it. I'm concerned about what's going to happen with our troops and the things that they are looking at now in terms of their futures. And we need strong, capable civilian leadership in the department. So I thank you all again for your willingness to serve. Thank you, Chairman Reed.
Thank you very much, Senator Inhofe. Now, let me recognize Mr. Sherman for his statement. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and committee members. I am honored to be President Biden's nominee to be the Department of Defense Chief Information Officer, and am grateful for the chance to speak with you today. First and foremost, I would like to thank Liz, my wife of 29 years, who also serves in national security. Her support and love have been my rock. We are both so proud of our grown children, Brad and Savannah, and their spouses, Oksana and Kurt. I also want to recognize my parents, who are no longer with us, but are no doubt here in spirit. Along with a bit of their Texas accents, their lessons about hard work, respect, and citizenship have stuck with me. That word citizenship has really meant service to me and my family. Following my time as an Army officer, I served in the intelligence community and DoD for nearly 25 years, starting as an imagery analyst and later taking on a number of roles, ranging from duty officer in the White House Situation Room on 9/11 to leading our impressive officers and senior executives in several agencies. I've also had the opportunity to employ and manage new technologies on missions ranging from overhead reconnaissance to open source intelligence. I saw firsthand how we gain advantage through capabilities like cloud computing and large-scale data analytics. And my experience in these areas led to my selection as the CIO of the entire IC. Working with talented colleagues from across the community, we built upon the flagship modernization effort known as the IC Information Technology Enterprise. We made tough recommendations to cancel things that weren't working, reinforced successes in areas like cloud, and sharpened our focus on cybersecurity and interoperability. Put simply, we ensured the IC's technology transformation would remain an exemplar. I was then humbled when asked to serve at DoD, first as the Principal Deputy CIO, and for 8 months as the Acting CIO. As we drove to achieve Secretary Austin's priority to stay ahead of our China pacing threat, our team pivoted to an enterprise multi-cloud approach, which is foundational for key priorities such as Joint All-Domain Command and Control, or JADC2, and the Artificial Intelligence and Data Accelerator Initiative, or ADA. Additionally, we oversaw the successful rollout of an enduring collaboration and productivity capability to millions of DoD users and began moving the department towards stronger cybersecurity with an approach known as Zero Trust. The team also made substantial progress on other critical portfolios to include electromagnetic spectrum, positioning, navigation, and timing, IT reform, special access program IT, data transformation, software development, and support to artificial intelligence. The progress on these fronts has been substantial as well. Throughout my career, enabling mission has always been my foremost priority. At DoD, I believe the CI of success is ultimately measured on how our warfighters, especially in the Indo-Pacific, are able to operate in a remote and disconnected environment, and whether a pilot can still strike targets when an adversary is trying to jam her GPS signal. These examples and many others are based on the Department's ability to transform at scale with the very best technologies in cybersecurity through constant and agile change and with the whole team. If confirmed, I would be honored to shepherd and lead this effort. I get out of bed every morning knowing our adversaries are not standing still in the technology realm, and we must not either. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Let me now recognize Mr. Vazirani. And I apologize for the multiple pronunciations of your name, sir.
Well, thank you, Chairman Reed. Morning, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm humbled and honored to be with you today as President Biden's nominee for Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, and appreciate the confidence President Biden, Secretary Austin, and Undersecretary Cisneros have in me. My father and his family fled Pakistan for India during partition. They knew danger and turmoil. They left their home with nothing but hope, seeking opportunity. My father's journey brought him to the United States to complete his postdoctoral studies. It is here in America where he met my mother, the daughter of an Indian Foreign Service officer stationed in Washington. After marrying, my parents returned to India where they started their family. Having had a taste of the opportunity America offered, in 1967 they moved our young family to the United States to pursue their American dream. My parents understood achieving that dream would require hard work, service, and sacrifice. After my father passed, my single mother of 5 children put herself through law school and eventually married a Marine who lost his sight fighting in Vietnam. My stepdad's blindness didn't stop him. He continued serving as an advocate for veterans, founding the Blinded American Veterans Foundation, and retired from the federal workforce after serving at the Corporation for National and Community Service, where he helped establish the Vietnam Veterans Leadership Program. Also a patriot and dedicated in service to our country, my mother served as a professional staff member in the Maryland Legislature and the United States Congress, serving as counsel for several House committees, including government reform and civil service, all while caring for her children and a blinded Marine. I'm humbled to have grown up in a home where service to nation and community was the family business. Growing up, I learned that the American dream is about more than what you achieve and build for yourself, but what you do for others. These are values my wife Deborah and I have tried to instill in our 2 amazing children, one of whom is currently serving as a Marine stationed in 29 Palms. My parents' example of service above self, to improve where needed and innovate where required, inspired my decision to serve in the United States Navy and later a career working with organizations, both public and private, to drive transformative change and care for our military families. I'm honored to have the opportunity to continue that service as Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. I believe the reason our military is the greatest the world has seen is the people, military and civilian, who are our defense community. They dedicate their lives and those of their families to a cause greater than themselves. They serve at the front lines, the garrisons, and in the Pentagon, making sure that we are ready to deter and, if necessary, fight and win wars. We must provide for the training, education, health, safety, and well-being of those who serve in or out of uniform to maintain readiness and because it's the right thing to do. That care extends to military families, transitioning service members, retirees, caregivers, and survivors who have made countless sacrifices for our nation. If confirmed, I would strive to sustain a defense community that continues to safeguard the freedom and opportunity that my family has been fortunate to enjoy and privileged to protect. The contemporary challenges to readiness are significant: sexual assault, harassment, suicide, spouse unemployment, COVID, and financial and food insecurity. We face challenges in recruitment and retention, shaping a defense community that reflects America and is comprised of diverse, effective teams prepared for tomorrow's fight. I believe America's people offer us our greatest distinct advantage over our adversaries, and that we must maintain the high levels of personnel readiness to maintain that edge. To meet these challenges and support the people who put country first requires innovation, a willingness to ask and answer tough questions, rapidly test and learn, and scale solutions. That's the role of the Deputy Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness. If confirmed, I will work closely with the Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness, Deputy Secretary, Service Secretaries, and Secretary to care for the total force and our military families, to meet readiness requirements and achieve our national security objectives. I commit, if confirmed, that I will bring my best each day to serve those who serve us. I also commit to collaborating with this committee in a transparent, agile, and responsive manner to ensure that the department is meeting our sacred obligation to support warfighters and their families. Senators, thank you for the opportunity to be with you here today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ritchie, please.
Thank you, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished members of the committee. It's an absolute honor to come before you today as President Biden's nominee for General Counsel of our great Army. I am joined here today by my brother, Dr. John Ritchie of New Jersey, and my daughter, Maria Smith, a 10th grader with straight A's, who happens to be missing her government class today, and in her precocious way was delighted to note that she'd be seeing government in action, so it would be okay. My son, who's 21 years old and a college student, could not be here. He was called on to work a shift at our local grocery store, much as he did during the height of the pandemic, where he sometimes worked 12 to 14 days straight and answered the call of duty. This call of duty, this type of demonstration, it's endemic in our family, and I must thank my parents for that. Hector and Maria Ritchie, who proudly hail from Puerto Rico and are watching today. It is they who instilled in me a great sense of duty and selflessness. They also instilled in me personal discipline, goodwill, and a belief in people, for which I am grateful. I am also grateful to President Biden, Secretary Austin, and Secretary Wormuth for the confidence they have shown in me by nominating me for this position. If confirmed, I would be incredibly excited to return home to the Army and resume my service to its soldiers and civilians. I served as an Army officer for just short of 22 years, first as a personnel officer, and then as a judge advocate, retiring at the rank of lieutenant colonel. Every day, I had the immense privilege of watching soldiers put their teams, mission, and country first, taking great risks and making personal sacrifices to achieve our shared goals. I remain grateful to my family and those of all our service members and civilians who make such service possible. Should I be confirmed, my experiences in the Army have prepared me well to assume the duties of General Counsel and do right by our soldiers, civilians, and family members. As a judge advocate, I worked on a broad spectrum of legal issues, including military justice, equal opportunity, fiscal law, and operational and administrative law. I deployed to the Middle East twice, first for Operation Desert Storm in 1992, and then in support of Operations Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom in 2004. I have served in operational and intelligence units and on service and combatant command staffs. I've also served in the Office of the Judge Advocate General and the Office of the General Counsel. I understand the importance of the collaborative relationship that must exist between these two offices. I have been fortunate to work with many of the lawyers who are still serving in these offices, including the current Judge Advocate General of the Army, an extraordinary leader with whom I served at Fort Hood. Since retiring from the Army, I have worked as a federal civilian lawyer, currently leading a dynamic team of attorneys in the Office of the General Counsel at the Department of Agriculture, many of whom insisted on watching today, and I thank them for their support. Last year, I was privileged to serve the Army as a civilian member of the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee, where our 5-member team completed a comprehensive review of the Fort Hood Command and Climate and Culture. And that has been the impetus for great change at Fort Hood and across the Army and even DOD. If confirmed, I commit to serve our soldiers and civilians selflessly in ensuring the Office of the General Counsel provides the highest quality legal services to Secretary Wormuth and the Department, and to further the cooperative relationship enjoyed by the Department and this committee. This is a momentous time, a time of great change for the Army, where they are embarking on a complete cultural transformation for the benefit of its soldiers. At Fort Hood, I witnessed the damage inflicted on soldiers and their units by the prevalence of sexual assault and sexual harassment. If confirmed, I will ensure that current initiatives respect the rule of law and due process and assist Army leaders in bringing about real change for the brave men and women that serve our country. The current momentum must not fade. Success is a must. I am also committed to helping the Department tackle a range of challenges such as quality housing on and near Army installations, beating the COVID pandemic, and ensuring we have the appropriate acquisition authorities to get our warfighters the equipment they need. And for my Spanish-speaking friends and families who are watching, gracias por su apoyo. Thank you for your support. Senators, thank you for your consideration of my nomination. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ritchie. And now, for all of the witnesses, I will ask a series of questions that are required for all civilian nominees. You may answer together. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you assumed any duties or taken any action that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No.
No.
Exercising our legislative and oversight responsibilities makes it important that this committee, its subcommittees, and other appropriate committees of Congress receive testimony, briefings, reports, records, and other information from the executive branch on a timely basis. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify before this committee when requested?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you agree to provide records, documents, and electronic communications in a timely manner when requested by this committee, its subcommittees, or other appropriate committees of Congress, and to consult with the requester regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such records?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established by this committee for the production of reports, records, and other information, including timely responding to hearing questions for the record?
Yes.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Will those witnesses and briefers be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Sherman, DOD has been filling a critical role in developing 5G technologies and the dual-use applications that will ride on top of the next generation of wireless networks. 5G and the application that 5G makes possible will drive future economic prosperity and, critically, national security. Do we need to sustain or even increase our level of investment and commitment to ensure that Chinese telecommunications companies do not dominate this critical infrastructure?
Senator, 5G is critical to our warfighting capability, both training here in the continental United States and then capabilities potentially overseas. In terms of development within the Department of Defense, our continued focus on this going forward between research and engineering, the CIO, the services, and other components to develop 5G and indeed lean forward to 6G capabilities are going to be critical in that space. Strategy will drive our budget on this. And if confirmed, this would be a priority for me to work to look at what is the proper investment to ensure if CIO or when CIO takes us over from R&E, that the pilot projects that are implemented fully flourish and that we're postured to provide that warfighting capability.
Thank you. I do continue to still believe that DOD and U.S. telecom companies can successfully share the spectrum that is vital to both. Is that possible?
Yes, Senator. Spectrum sharing must be our watchword going forward. The DOD has vacated a good bit of the spectrum over the years, but now with where things are, the spectrum needs to be shared, particularly in the 3100 to 3450 megahertz, working with industry, the executive branch, and this committee and others, figuring out how we do that successfully to both enable DOD capabilities as well as U.S. economic development would be critical.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vazirani, you have a record as a naval veteran yourself. Your son is Marine serving, and As the former director of the National Military Family Association, you have extraordinary personal connection to the issues you'll be dealing with. So can I ask what your priorities would be with respect to family readiness when you, if confirmed, take over?
Senator, thank you. Addressing family readiness is critical to force readiness, and making sure that we take care of families is critical. There are several things that I looked at when I was an advocate for military families, and if confirmed, I would look at a broader set of issues as well. But things that are of critical importance to military families today are military spouse unemployment, the degree to which we can help military spouses achieve fulfilling careers and contribute to the financial success of their family will also contribute to the readiness of that family and the ability of that service member to continue in their service. And so that becomes a retention issue. To enable that, we need to look at innovative options for child care. So those are some of the things that would be specific for military families, Senator.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ritchie, you've had an extraordinary career in the Army as a lawyer, and now you're positioned to be the General Counsel of the Army. And again, my comments could be directed at any one of the nominees today. Extraordinary experience in the field you've been nominated to direct. One aspect has been your participation at the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee, and one of their conclusions was that at Fort Hood it appeared to be compliant on the surface, but was hollow and lacking leadership attention, day-to-day implementation, broad acceptance by the enlisted soldiers, and the full inculcation into the culture and character of the Fort Hood community. Senator Inhofe and I traveled down there, and I think that was our impression also. This is as much a leadership problem as it is a legal problem, but you will be right at the crossroads of both leadership and the law. So could you give us some insights from your participation on the committee?
Yes, Chairman. I saw personally at Fort Hood the devastation that sexual assault can wreak on its victims, and as well as the way it erodes unit cohesion. And if confirmed, it would be a priority of mine to assist in the implementation of the recommendations of the DoD IRC as well as the Fort Hood IRC. It's my understanding that the recommendations have been accepted, but now it's time for implementation, and the details are still being worked out. And it would be my job as the Chief Legal Officer for the Army to assist in ensuring there's accurate and timely legal advice to allow for swift implementation.
Thank you very much. Again, to all the witnesses, you bring forward impressive, detailed backgrounds in the areas you've been nominated to serve in, and I wish you well. I think we can try to rapidly get you confirmed with cooperation of the committee. Senator, please.
Yeah, I regretfully have to outdo the chairman. I've been critical of this president and a lot of the things that are going on, but I have to say that I've never seen three nominees more qualified and in a better position to do a better job for America than we're looking at right now. And I don't know what came over him, but
you may do that every time.
Yeah. But anyway, no, I'm so impressed with each one of you for different reasons. Certainly, starting with Mr. Sherman, you have background and experience from when Dana Deasy was in this position, and there are things that had to be done. And I know that it was pretty controversial back when Legato received the position that he was in, contrary to virtually everyone of every federal agency that was out there and on record at the time, along with the general public. I've not seen so much disregard for one individual or one group taking over. In this case, something as significant as the group handling the L-band for GPS and the threats that poses on our entire segment. And so I did ask you if you saw the hearing that we had back at the beginning of this, and I think you told me, Mr. Chairman, that you did, and so my feeling and the feeling of everyone who testified that day as to the problems that exist. So I would only ask if you are, just keep in mind, you've got the background, you know the issue, you actually worked with Dana Deasy, and so I hope that you will draw on that background to try to correct a problem that's got to be corrected. Are there any comments you want to make about that?
Sure.
Experience?
Assured positioning, navigation, and timing, particularly with global positioning system, is so critical to our warfighting ability, both here in the homeland and overseas. As you noted, sir, I am very familiar with the legato issue, and where that license is so close to the GPS spectrum, in my view, represents an unacceptable threat to bleed over into that spectrum. Despite our efforts to share other parts of the spectrum, where legato is not acceptable. And if confirmed, Senator, I would want to work with the executive branch, this committee, and others to ensure that we rectify that issue to assure our PNT capabilities for our forces, sir. Well,
Mr. Chairman, I just tell you how much I appreciate a very strong position that you've taken. Mr. Vazirani, you have a background, as the chairman pointed out, that you really know. You have a hands-on background, and one of the problems I'm having and have been having now that comes out of this administration is the problem of the COVID problems, with the idea that as I read this, and hopefully this is not going to happen, but there is a punishment, a punitive position that someone who is not complying could, and we're talking about military people as well as contractors, those individuals could find themselves to be fired. Well, right now, certainly you realize, as do most people, our biggest problem right now is retention and recruitment. We did inherit a very good and positive economy. Consequently, it's hard to find people to work because everyone's working, and so that does create a problem. But right now, if they were to, I can't think of anything that could be worse than if we were to find ourselves in a situation where we're letting people go. We're firing people. It's something that's going to have to be corrected. I'd like any comment you might make as to what effect this could have on the morale and our recruitment and retention problem that exists today.
Senator, I believe that COVID, and I said in my statement that COVID is one of the readiness challenges that we face. One of the things that we've learned over the past 2 years is that COVID is deadly and it detracts from readiness, and that the vaccines are safe and effective. So, Senator, I'm fully supportive of the President's order and the Secretary's mandate to vaccinate the force to ensure our readiness. It's my understanding that there is an administrative process that allows for exemptions, whether they're medically necessary or due to religious belief, and then progressing administrative actions to address a service member who may decline a vaccine. So, Senator, if I'm confirmed, I would certainly look towards making sure that those processes are administered with care and compassion so that we understand the specific needs of each service member.
Yeah, but here's the problem I see is the damage is already done. Now, I'm talking about two Marines walked across the street, just happened to recognize me and tell me that they were going to resign, and then just the idea. I was enlisted personnel back when I was in my military days. We don't go into a lot of the details as to what the motives are and all that, but if all they read is that you better do this, you're going to be fired. Well, that's just not acceptable. So I think that, frankly, I think the damage is already done, and we're going to have to do the best we can to remedy it. Now, I know my time's expired, but I do want to comment to Ms. Ricci that one of the problems I have in addressing a very serious problem that's out there is that we seem to be wanting to, all of our efforts seem to be, what are we going to do now, as opposed to a prevention in terms of sexual assault. In other words, preventing it before it takes place, not afterwards. And so I know my time is expired, but
Senator, go ahead, please.
if you just have a short answer for that.
Yes, Senator. I agree with you. Prevention is critical, and that this is where the majority of our effort needs to be focused. And I believe that the IRC recommendations and the Fort Hood recommendations will lead us to that prevention strategy.
I agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Shaheen, please.
Thank you, and congratulations to each of you on your nominations, and thank you for your long public service to the country. I'd like to begin with you, Mr. Sherman, because this summer, a DOD and IG report identified shortfalls in DOD's recruiting and retention of cybersecurity-related positions. I had the benefit of being in New Hampshire this summer with General Van Ovost, who came up to look at the KC-46s that our National Guard has. And she talked passionately about the need for all kinds of IT positions within our military and how we were going to get there. And as you think about your challenges in taking over this role, how do you see your role in recruiting and retention? Because it seems to me without that workforce, we can't do anything else we need to do.
Senator, while cybersecurity is certainly about technology, I feel so strongly that the people factor is what makes it go. If confirmed, I would move out on a new strategy to look at our cyber and digital talent so we could think differently about how we recruit, reskill, and retain our individuals. This is a whole-of-nation effort, and we must come at it much differently, thinking about diversity, about different sort of career paths, maybe not a 30-year career path, but folks come in and out of the organization, looking at the security protocols therein, and also building upon the progress the DOD has made in terms of how they already understand the work roles and the cyber accepted service, but also thinking differently about how we implement it, Senator.
Well, thank you. I would urge you to look at the National Guard as well, because we have a lot of talent in National Guard units around the country on this issue, and we should take advantage of them wherever possible. Mr. Vazirani, I'm very concerned about the potential for Havana syndrome attacks, also known as anomalous health incidents. Obviously, in your role, you're going to be in a position to consider how DOD responds to those issues. I very much appreciate Secretary Austin's issuing a guidance, but I think what's going to be very important is to have particular protocols that everyone understands and knows what to do if they are the victim of such an attack. So will you commit that this is something that you will take a look at and work on in your new, if confirmed?
Senator, I do know that this is a serious issue and that it's become a priority for the administration. And if confirmed, I would certainly commit to ensuring that the resources of the department, particularly the health system, are available to address this.
Good, thank you. Another issue that has surfaced, sadly, on too many of our military installations is the prevalence of PFAS. It's shown up in the blood of a lot of folks in New Hampshire who were stationed at the former Pease Air Force Base and who now live in the community. Obviously, these chemicals, the PFAS chemicals, are linked to a variety of health concerns. So, and one of the things we need to do is to start thinking about how to track those. Are you aware of any efforts by DOD to offer blood testing for military service members and their families who've been stationed at those contaminated bases? And do you think we should be looking at some sort of a tracking effort to address this?
Senator, certainly the health and well-being of service members and their families is critical for the readiness of the force. And while I'm not aware of any specific actions that the department is taking, if confirmed, I would certainly look at how can we understand the prevalence and impact of these toxic chemicals and what they could mean for families and for readiness. And so, Senator, I do commit that if confirmed that I would work with this committee and with colleagues in the department to ensure we understand the complexity of that particular issue.
Well, thank you. I think there are some provisions in the House-passed defense authorization bill that would look at testing, blood testing for members of our military. Ms. Ritchie, you talked eloquently about what happened at Fort Hood and the need for cultural change. Again, I appreciate Secretary Austin's announcing his support for moving sexual assault cases outside of the military chain of command. This committee voted to support that. If confirmed, how do you see your role in making sure that that gets done in a way that people in the military can buy into and that better addresses the issue of sexual assault?
Senator, it's important to support the Secretary's decision. And if confirmed as the Chief Legal Officer of the Army, it would be my duty to assist the Army in understanding the nuances, the legal nuances involved, and making sure that we have the appropriate implementation so that we do support the Secretary's decision in removing that decision from the chain of command.
And do I have a commitment, your commitment, that you will come back and report to this committee on the progress of how those changes are going?
Yes, Senator, you absolutely do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Tuberville, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here today. Mr. Sherman, back in July, this committee marked up the FY22 NDA and increased defense top-line spending, which included $116.1 billion for DoD, RDT, and E. A significant portion of this money will go to contractors. Many of them will be small businesses, and for some, it will be their first DoD contract. Unfortunately, these contractors' cyber attacks against our homeland are growing, making their small businesses a target in the eyes of our adversaries. In Alabama alone, we have 5,000 defense contractors. It is self-defeating to spend billions a year on cutting-edge technologies and critical research, but then let China and Russia sneak through the back door. We cannot expect our DoD contractors, especially our small businesses, to fend for themselves against cyber attacks from nation states and malign actors. If confirmed, what will you do to assist all contractors with collective defensive capabilities needed to adequately safeguard, our technology?
Senator, cybersecurity is certainly the paramount activity of the Chief Information Officer. And as you note, small and medium-sized businesses are our backbone of this economy. If confirmed, there's a number of things I'd want to do to include with the Cyber Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC program, making that updated and not onerous to those small and medium companies in Alabama and everywhere else, sir. Also working with General Paul Nakasone at NSA and U.S. Cybercom, doing things like providing, as we would call it, cybersecurity as a service for that smaller and medium-sized company, giving them templates and guides on how to do this so they're not having to reinvent the wheel themselves on this, with always thinking not just about the very large corporations, but those small and medium companies that are so important, and also where the Chinese and the Russians and others try to go after to get into our network, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Vazirani, if confirmed, would you have supervision, you would have supervision over the Department of Defense education activity, 160 schools in 7 states, 11 foreign countries, and 2 territories. 2 of these schools are in my home state of Alabama, Fort Rucker and Maxwell Air Force Base. I'm a proud military brat, was an educator for 40 years. I've seen firsthand the importance of a stable environment for kids inside the classroom and at home. Students are in their 3rd year impacted by COVID-19 mask mandates, virtual learning. Now school boards across the country are pushing critical race theory and trying to restrict parents' involvement in the classroom. Would you agree that some of the best solutions to the challenges facing our schools come from the local level, where parents, students, teachers, and administrators can collaborate and work towards success together? And can you elaborate on that?
Senator, I appreciate the question, and I think what you're pointing out is that the education of military children is critical, particularly when we look at the future force. 80% of those who serve today are military connected. And so we have to think about the appropriate education of those children, make sure that there are appropriate education options for the families so that their children can advance, particularly as they move from one location to another. Senator, confirmed, I would want to look at the education activities and make sure that the appropriate level of education is being provided. I think that parents do provide a great resource and are a partner in the education of their child. And so if confirmed, I would want to work with the colleagues at the Defense Department Education Authority to make sure that the education and the curriculum is being developed in a way that will appropriately educate those children.
Thank you. And Ms. Ritchie, it was good to hear you say something about the living quarters in a lot of our military bases. A lot of them are atrocious. I've been to some of them, and it was good to hear you say, that you support upgrading some of those facilities. Could you elaborate on that? Have you had firsthand knowledge of that?
Yes, Senator, I have. At Fort Hood, I did learn of the abominable living conditions that some of our service members have lived in. And it was a small mention in the Fort Hood report that was part of the overall command climate. And I would be supportive of the Army's continuing efforts to reform how privatized housing works, to ensure that contracts are enforced and that partners are held accountable.
Thank you. The attitude of our military is very important, and a lot of it, starts at home, obviously with kids and living quarters, and they don't make a lot of money. A lot of them can go do other things, and we got to make sure that we can do anything possible to keep, our best in the military, because with all this technology now, a lot can leave. They can go to other places, have a better life with a lot more money. But a lot of them want to support this country, and we appreciate that. So thanks for being here today. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tuberville. Senator Kane, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to the nominees. You're all well qualified for your positions. Mr. Sherman, I want to pick up just commenting on something that Senator Tuberville was asking about that I'm also really focused on, and that is the ability of small, innovative tech companies to participate in work across the DoD, but including in cybersecurity. And so this question of having a process to get CMMC compliance that can work for small technology companies is something that I'm also really interested in, and I appreciate Senator Tuberville asking about that and your commitment that you would work on that. Would look forward to working with you on it. Here's one that's kind of related, dealing with technology companies' interaction with DoD. The DoD has a process for certification. It's called, technology companies have a process within DoD that's called impact level to get certified to do work with the DoD. There's a similar process in the GSA called FedRAMP to get approval through the GSA to be a government IT vendor. And I often wonder whether we can create reciprocity between some of these programs so that a company that gets, certified through the GSA process could get certified through the DoD or vice versa without requiring duplication of work. We run into the same issue with security clearances where different agencies use different practices on security clearance, and it makes it very difficult. Do you think there should be reciprocity between the GSA certification system and the DoD certification system?
Senator, given how critical our private sector is to our tech innovation, particularly from small and medium companies as well as large ones, if confirmed, I would always try to seek symmetry and, I don't want to say simplification, but making it, being cognizant of how it affects the companies. And if confirmed, would take a look at the GSA parity to FedRAMP, and also recognizing that we at Department of Defense will often layer above and be extra certifications on top of that given our security considerations, but at the front end making this as smooth and symmetrical as possible, sir.
That would be great. If I could just, I take that as a commitment to work together with GSA to see what symmetries can be created. And you're right, if there are additional security requirements at the DoD side, but you could build on the base of what GSA has done with FedRAMP rather than having a completely separate certification process, that would be very much appreciated. Mr. Vazirani, I want to ask you about our workforce needs. The Commandant of the Marine Corps released planning guidance in 2019, and I'm going to read you a quote from it. Quote, "Our manpower system was designed in the industrial era to produce mass, not quality. We assume that quantity of personnel was the most important element of the system, and that Marines are all essentially interchangeable." My son is a Marine too. I know you've got a boy in the Marines. "As the complexity of the world has increased, the spread between physical jobs and thinking jobs has increased dramatically. War still has a physical component, and all Marines need to be screened and ready to fight. However, we've not adapted to the needs of the current battlefield. The only way to attract and retain Marines capable of winning on the new battlefield is to compete with the tools and incentives available to them in the marketplace. What are some of the areas of the military's recruitment, training, promotion, and retention system that could benefit from incentives found, quote, in the marketplace?"
Senator, I appreciate that question. I think your that point about making sure that we have the right talent, and it's not just a question of quantity, it's a question of quality as well. I think as we think about the emerging warfare domains and the way that war will be waged into the future, we have to think about that as in order to compete on that battlefield, to have the right talent. And so, if confirmed, one of the things I'd want to do is work with the services and the team within personnel and readiness to see what mechanisms are available to ensure that we get a diverse and qualified total workforce. And I think that's a question of and how do you achieve that through the military service as well as the civilian component of the military. And so as we go through these this process of recruiting people, we have to think about, are we reaching the right people who have those skills? And then two, what are the mechanisms we have available to retain them? Because as we compete, we're also competing with corporations and institutions. And so we have to look at what are the tools available to us to retain the talent.
One mechanism that I'll just put on the radar screen that I'll ask you about should you be confirmed is one that we included in the NDAA in 2020. There was a provision under Section 860 that established the Defense Civilian Training Corps, and this corps was sort of an ROTC-like corps that we could use to attract people into particular fields, engineering, acquisition, and others. We were going to need a strong workforce going forward. I'd like to talk further about the success of that model. It's still very new, and what the DoD plans to do to really exploit the value of a program like that. But thanks to all the witnesses, and congratulations to you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Kane. Senator Hawley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all the witnesses for being here. Mr. Sherman, let me start with you. The use of Chinese-made hardware like printed circuit boards poses a major cybersecurity concern for the United States. I spoke about this with Microsoft's President Brad Smith when he was here earlier this year. He agreed with this assessment. Let me ask you if you agree that it's time for DoD to stop using Chinese printed circuit boards in the information systems that our warfighters depend on to defend their country.
Senator, I see China as a paramount threat to our systems, everything we're doing at DoD, and if confirmed, that would absolutely be something I would look at. We do not want the Chinese in or near our system, sir.
Let me ask you about China with regard to Taiwan. If China invades Taiwan, it will likely try to do so by surprise, of course, and as quickly as possible. That's the fait accompli scenario. One of the ways in which it will likely try to achieve its objectives is to overwhelm our cyber defense systems and try to degrade or neutralize as many of our critical defense systems as possible. So in your assessment, is DoD currently prepared to withstand and fight through a barrage of cyber attacks in the event of a Chinese attempted fait accompli?
Senator, I believe DoD is well postured based on what I know right now. That is, with any sort of defensive mechanisms, we can always improve it. And if confirmed, cybersecurity, working with General Nakasone at Cybercom, informed by NSA threat intelligence to keep the Chinese back on their heels, would be a top priority.
Very good. Can I just come back to the printed circuit boards for just a second? You said that China was a concern. I appreciate that. But would you agree it's time for DoD to stop using Chinese printed circuit boards?
Senator, if confirmed, I would have to look at that, but in principle, any sort of Chinese hardware or software should not be on or near our systems would be my belief.
Okay. I look forward to hearing from you further on that. On the Taiwan question again, talk to us about how the requirements for defending against a surge of cyber attacks like we were just talking about, how do those differ from the requirements for defending against Chinese cyber attacks on American systems during peacetime? In other words, what do we need to be prepared for in a effectively a kinetic scenario that we otherwise wouldn't be?
I think a principle of zero trust, Senator, will be for both scenarios, assuming they're already on our networks right now, and not just defending at the perimeter in a wall and moat scenario or even a defense in depth, but segmenting our networks and everything we're doing in a way that we've not done before, making it about the data and also tagging people and tagging data in a way we've not done before. Zero trust will be the key, both for defending here in the homeland as well as out at the edge where they could attack us.
Let me ask you, if you're confirmed, what you'll do to ensure that we're able to not only defend against Chinese cyber attacks in peacetime, but also to be able to withstand and fight through them in a potential future conflict.
Senator, if confirmed, my role as CIO would be to ensure we have the most robust defensive capabilities possible in providing the infrastructure for General Nakasone and Cybercom to use for offensive capabilities.
Are there any specific steps that you can think of now that you would take, you think need to be taken in that regard?
The most immediate step, if confirmed, would be what we call Enterprise Identity Credential Access Management, or ICAM. Somewhat of a techie term, but something that has to be there to be able to tag the people and tag the data on that zero trust scenario, sir.
Good. Let me ask you a little bit about the consolidation of our industrial base. This is something that I've raised with other nominees before the committee. DOD has long struggled with this increasing consolidation. We're seeing problems now with emerging technologies where just a few large companies in this country can own a lot of technology or can buy it up. Do you agree that concentrating market power in just a handful of companies, and I'm thinking specifically of Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, makes it harder for competition to occur and to spur innovation, and that's especially true as it relates to information technologies?
Senator, I see our technology defense industrial base as a national advantage for us. In terms of their consolidation, all I can say, if confirmed as CIO, I will be a very tough customer to all of them without favoritism or bias, and making sure our warfighters get the very best technology for their warfighting needs.
Yeah, you're anticipating there my next question, which is how can we ensure a robust and competitive marketplace for these emerging technologies that isn't dominated by a few firms and ultimately is getting us the best innovation that's possible and that we need in order to succeed?
Senator, if confirmed, I would see that done by rigorous requirements, but also casting a wide net, not to exclude small and medium businesses with geographic diversity, different capabilities, and working with acquisition and sustainment and research and engineering and others to make sure we hear multiple voices for our requirements.
Very good. If the chairman will allow me to slide one more question in here very quickly, Mr. Vazirani, I want to ask you about the needs in the Pacific Theater. Secretary Austin told me earlier this year, I'm going to quote him now, that combat credible forward deterrent posture is instrumental to the U.S. military's ability to deter and, if necessary, deny a fait accompli scenario. We're talking about Taiwan there. Forward deployed units are only part of the solution, of course. These organizations have to be filled with service members who understand the Pacific theater of operations. And if nominated, your office will oversee the recruitment and retention of all DoD personnel. Here's my question. How can DoD better man and equip PACOM units with specially trained individuals who are ready to compete and win in the Pacific theater, given the unique needs and requirements there?
Senator, I think there, again, it's a question of how do we get to the right talent, the people who can fight those wars, who have the skills, the knowledge, the language skills, the cultural skills to know how we might engage an enemy in that region. So if confirmed, that's something I would work with the people within the personnel and readiness, with the undersecretary and with the service secretaries to make sure that we understand what the requirements are for each of those forces who may engage, and ensure that we have the right standards, and so that the standards and requirements meet that and that we can meet our recruiting goals.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Blumenthal, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank each of you for your service and for your willingness to serve in these new capacities. Mr. Sherman, I'm not sure what your role will be, if confirmed, in the procedures and standards used in classifying documents. But I have raised repeatedly in our classified sessions the fact that a lot of what we're hearing, the American people deserve to hear, and there's no real reason that the material should be classified. In a lot of the instances where I raise this issue, the military or intelligence officials there, without disclosing any classified information that may have taken place there, tend to agree. And in fact, the American people deserve to know more. It would be useful for the Department of Defense that they should know more, and in fact for our democracy. So will you undertake a review of our current classification standards and procedures with a view to opening more of it to the public?
Senator, I certainly see the absolute value in our way of government for transparency, but also keeping our secrets safe. If confirmed, I would work with the stakeholders in the Department of Defense to include intelligence and security, INS, and other parts of the department to look at this topic.
Will you commit to give us a plan for that review, a specific plan as to who will be involved and what the timetable is?
Senator, I would commit to work with the stakeholders who have that appropriate policy under them, but yes, I would, if confirmed, take this as a priority.
Well, with all due respect, will you present the Committee on Armed Services, the United States Senate, with a plan, a specific plan for whom you'll consult and what your timetable will be?
I will commit to that, Senator.
Thank you. Who do you think should be involved? Who are the stakeholders that you would involve?
Senator, based on what I know about the job, it would be intelligence and security and other folks who look at the counterintelligence equities. I know CIO has a role in this, but other parts of the department do as well, as well as protecting secrets and safeguarding that area. They would absolutely need to be involved, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Visriani, I'm sure you are aware of the increasing rate of suicide, an alarming increasing rate of suicide among our veterans and service members. Since September 11, 2001, apparently that number is more than quadruple the number who died in the wars. Previously, I may have some of the details wrong. There's a study that estimates that 7,057 service members have been killed in post-9/11 war operations, while 30,177 active duty service members and veterans have died by suicide. The average suicide rate for post-9/11 veterans is between 18 to 34 was 32.3 per 100,000 between 2005 and 2017, but it rose to 45.9 per 100,000 in 2018. That's about 2.5 times the suicide rate in the general population. Are you familiar with the study that provided these numbers from Brown University's Costs of War Project?
Senator, I'm first of all, any suicide, any number of suicides in the military or veteran community are alarming, and we should be concerned about that. Senator, I'm not familiar with that specific study. I'm familiar with the studies that the department has done regarding suicide. If confirmed, this is an area that would be a particular concern for me and a priority to look at what are we doing. As the Secretary said, the first thing we need to do is make sure we reduce stigma and we encourage help seeking so that service members, their families, and they understand that we can overcome that stigma so that as they proceed through their military life cycle and even into the veteran community, they know how to ask for help. The other side of that, Senator, that I'd focus on is ensuring that leaders know how to recognize the signs of suicide and when to offer help and to make sure that there's a trusted relationship where a service member can ask for help.
I appreciate that answer. My time has expired. This topic is a big, complex, and important one, and I look forward to following up with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all three of you for your nominations. Mr. Sherman, you get a pass on this question, but because I think there are families and friends watching, I'd like to pronounce your last names right. Could you please pronounce your name? Is it Vasarani?
Vazirani.
Vazira. And Ms. Ritchie?
Ritchie.
Okay. Thank you. I asked my staff. She said it had been pronounced a couple of different ways, so I just wanted to make sure I got it right. Ms. Ritchie, I am very focused on military housing. I've made several visits to Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune. I've done town halls, and we still have a problem there. We made some progress with the Bill of Rights, but I think that there's a lot more work to do. So can you give me an idea of how this will be whether or not this will be a priority for you and some vision as to how we can get to an improved state of military housing? It's a real problem. I think it has a number of effects on readiness, health, a number of other issues. Do you share that concern? Could you give me an idea of some of the things you may make a priority?
Yes, Senator, I absolutely share your concern. Soldiers should have safe housing, safe and healthy housing. And during my time at Fort Hood, I did listened to some of the concerns of the service members living there and some of the conditions that they faced. And I understand that the Army is going through a revised, so to speak, way of looking at their partnerships with privatized housing and ensuring that contractors are held accountable. And if confirmed, that would be a priority of mine. That would be one of the priorities, is to make sure that our procurement processes are being enforced appropriately and that our partners are being held accountable.
I also think that we have to have a focus on what has occurred as a result of some of this unacceptable housing. I went into a house at Fort Bragg that had a dehumidifier in the hallway that was collecting so much water that the tank, they couldn't use the tank. They literally had to run a hose to the bathtub in the hallway bathroom just to be able to keep it running nonstop 24/7. So another area that I think we have to look at is how are we proactively helping the families that have documented medical conditions. I met with a number of military spouses who had doctors' advice to get out of these homes because the conditions in the homes were clearly causing health problems for them and their children. So that's another area I look forward to working with you after you're confirmed. I guess one other question I have for you has to do with military justice. What do you perceive would be an appropriate role for the Army General Counsel if Congress enacts Secretary Austin's proposal to establish the Office of Special Victims Prosecutions in the Secretariat of the Military Department?
Senator, if confirmed, the Army General Counsel as a chief legal officer would have the obligation to ensure swift implementation, to provide accurate and timely legal advice, and to assist in working out the legal nuances attendant to that change.
Mr. Sherman, I've got more in common with you than I do with most of the people in the Senate with my 29 years in information technology. I also want to echo what Senator Blumenthal said on suicide prevention, removing the stigma. That's very important. I also think that we have to act in the way that we talk. We all talk about removing the stigma, and then we'll go behind closed doors and whisper about a problem that we may have with a family member or a friend. So it really begins with our behavior, too, to help remove the stigma. But, Mr. Sherman, I feel like the Department of Defense is replete with opportunities to consolidate, to collapse some silos, and to really go through an enterprise transformation for the use of information technology, duplicative systems across service lines. I think that there's an opportunity to build cross-functional platforms and then only have, on an exception basis, the silos that we have today. Do you agree with that?
I do, Senator.
And do you think that the culture of the DOD can be changed to actually accept that? It's the same sort of problem I saw in large, diverse corporations, but what would you do to actually change the culture so that we could make meaningful progress and take a lot of cost out of our IT operations in the DOD?
Senator, I would build upon, if confirmed, successes that have been underway, for example, with the 26 defense agencies and field activities, what's called the Fourth Estate Network Optimization, to reduce all those inefficiencies there, scale that to the department level, build on what the military departments are doing. For example, the Department of Navy's Project Cattle Drive, they call it, to get rid of duplicative systems and drive greater efficiencies. I would, if confirmed, build on those successes, sir, and a lot of this would be built on data to make sure we know what's out there and to make that implemented, sir.
Well, this is something that is personally very important to me. It's very interesting to me. It keeps my skills up to date. So I'd like to get your commitment that I've received from your counterpart in Veterans Affairs to get together, take a look at your program office, the sort of structure that's going to be necessary to actually execute that. And it's also very important to me because I think there's a lot of integration opportunities, particularly with respect to the Cerner platform for the electronic health record, so that we can actually get to a point to where we may be able to predict a transitioning service member being at risk before they even know they are. I do believe that that's within our reach if we integrate and capture the right kind of data through the life cycle of a soldier. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sherman, there's been a lot of discussion about cyber on a lot of levels. I don't think there's any doubt that if there is a conflict that we're engaged in, cyber will be the first part of it. The first effort of our adversaries will be to try to blind us in terms of our ability to communicate. They're also using cyber to compromise our networks, to steal intellectual property. My question is, you use the word ensure. I think that may be an optimistic word. But how do we ensure? Do you anticipate pen testing, red teaming, bug bounties, hackers for hire? It seems to me the best way to be sure that, or to get toward insurance or assurance, is testing the network by friendly hackers or friendly those who are enabled to attack the networks and tell us where our vulnerabilities are. Is that in your agenda?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Not just trust, but verify and re-verify. Working with, for example, the Defense Digital Service, which does a lot of that bug bounty type activity at DoD. Also working with the Director of Operational Testing and Evaluation, DOT&E, so we can do that upfront testing as we buy technology such as commercial cloud capabilities to really see where vulnerabilities are. And as we've done, for example, on Office 365 being employed across the enterprise, finding vulnerabilities that even the vendor didn't know about.
And I would hope that you would work with NSA and Cybercom. They're the best in the world to test your own networks. One of my you use trust but verify. That's one of my favorite mottos. But another is, does it work and how do you know? And so Cybercom, it seems to me, and NSA, Paul Nakasone, would be a tremendous resource. Secondly, on cyber, we're engaged in a very large-scale modernization of our nuclear triad. As far as I'm concerned, we ought to scrap the word triad and talk about nuclear quad, because command and control is as important as any leg of the triad. If we don't have command and control, we can't communicate with the triad, it isn't going to work. So I hope that modernization, when we're talking about modernization of the submarine fleet or the missile or the bombers, we're also talking about a very intense modernization of command and control in the nuclear area.
Sir, NC3, and I like where you're heading with this, it's not just a triad, it's the fourth leg of a triad to ensure that the triad will be effective, having resilient, modern, strengthened NC3 on that, and that is an area too, and I should have included this, with General Nakasone, both from Cybercom and NSA, to ensure that NC3 network is there when we need it.
And it's got to be redundant and redundant and redundant.
Yes, sir.
We talked about workforce. I won't dwell on that, but as you know, that's a huge problem nationwide, and not only in the defense field, but in every field in terms of network security, cybersecurity, network administration. So workforce is something that I think has to be attended to. Mr. Vazzarini, two issues in your area. One that concerns me, and that is the geographic diversity of our armed forces. I was surprised to find in 1975 the division between the Northeast, the Midwest, and the South and the Southwest among our military personnel was about 50-50. I think it was 47-47. Today, it's 67-30. In other words, Midwest and Northeast have fallen to 30% of our active duty military. South and Southwest are now almost 2/3. I think that's unhealthy for the country to have our professional military service be geographically defined. Do you appreciate that concern, and what do we do about it?
Senator, I certainly I share that concern. I think that in order for us to have the most ready force, that force also has to look like America and come from the breadth of America. I think, Senator, if I'm confirmed, one of the things we want to look at is how can we improve the value proposition to reach young people who are eligible and qualified to serve in those areas, and ensure that we're accessing the talent.
It has to be a conscious strategy. The current strategy obviously isn't working. There has to be a conscious saying, we're going to recruit more in Cleveland or in Boston than we are today. We're going to put more advertising in whatever it is, and I hope you will pursue that. Second, I've just got a few seconds left, so I just want to touch on these. I want to associate myself with all the others that have talked about suicide. In the Vietnam War, we lost 58,000 people. In the decade from 2008 to 2017, we lost 60,000 people to suicide. The figures Senator Blumenthal mentioned are just shocking. We've lost 4 times as many military people and veterans to suicide since 9/11 than to operations. That's a stalker of our military personnel. I hope you'll really put some focus on that. If it were a military event killing 30,000 people over that period of time, we'd have all kinds of resources on it. So I hope you'll pursue that. Finally, Ms. Ritchie, I've looked into this whole housing issue. I think a lot of it is contract administration, and following up and enforcing the contracts that we have and renegotiating and improving those contracts with the private vendors. If you have an obligation under a contract but nobody ever enforces it or pays any attention to it, then you're gonna backslide, and I think that's exactly what happened. So I hope in your position you will be very contract lawyerly and follow those obligations. Be sure that they're enforced. That's one way to quickly bring those contractors back up to the standard that they've agreed to. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator King. Now let me recognize via WebEx Senator Duckworth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to associate myself also with the comments from my colleagues who came before me on both sides of the aisle on suicides among our military men and women. And just to remind everyone, the Veterans Crisis Hotline is 1-800-273-TALK, T-A-L-K, 1-800-273-TALK. You can call that if you're on the brink of homelessness, any kind of crisis, including needing just to talk to someone. I want to start by congratulating all 3 of you who are here today on your nominations. I do want to begin with a problem that has existed far too long, but has become more urgent during this pandemic, and that is military hunger. Far too many of our military families experience food insecurity. That's why I introduced a Military Hunger Prevention Act to create a basic needs allowance to help struggling military families put food on the table. My bill currently has 25 bipartisan co-sponsors in the Senate, an indicator of the broad support for solving this shameful problem. Mr. Vazirani, I apologize for mispronouncing your name. If confirmed, how will you address food insecurity among our service members?
Senator, thank you for raising that concern. Food insecurity, obviously, it affects the readiness of the family today. It detracts from the readiness of the service member when they're in the field if they're thinking that their family is hungry, and it detracts from our future readiness because of the children of many of those who serve today are going to serve into the future. Senator, if confirmed, I'd want to work with this committee and with people within the department to certainly meet up to the Secretary's priority of people first. I think we have to look at a range of options on how we solve for this, and part of that is ensuring that that those families have financial security. And so when I was an advocate, I looked at a range of options, the basic needs allowance, which I think is one of those options, and qualification for other programs that would allow for families to have the resources to ensure the well-being of their family.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you once you're confirmed on this. In January, you wrote, and I quote, "Military families are counting on Washington to ensure that services adequately fund child care fee assistance programs and partner with the community outside the gates to increase accessibility when on-installation wait lists are too long," end quote. You also noted in your advanced policy questions that ensuring affordable quality care is accessible to our military families will be one of my priorities. Your priorities. I agree that this is an issue of huge importance to our military families as well as to our readiness. That's why I introduced a Military Child Care Expansion Act that would authorize a number of programs to improve access to a range of child care options for military families. Mr. Vazirani, can you expand on the importance of affordable and accessible child care for our military families?
Senator, enabling military spouse employment and for military spouses to have fulfilling careers is critical to their families, but also to the readiness of the force, which will allow a service member to continue to serve in the way they are. Senator, to enable that requires child care and accessible child care that the family can get to and affordable child care. So if confirmed, Senator, I would want to look at a range of options, particularly around how do we innovate in providing child care to military families, whether it's on the installation or off the installation, as well as the opportunity for military spouses to earn their credentials and either provide child care in their homes and be reimbursed through a fee assistance program, or to become providers with portability within the military child care system.
Wonderful. Well, the FY22 NDAA has report language directing the DoD to seek out creative solutions to solve the child care availability crisis, and I hope that you will keep me updated on your progress.
Senator,
thank you. Finally, according to numerous studies, paid family leave offers clear advantages to both employers and families, yet depending on their branch of service and family situation, many service members currently only receive 2 or 3 weeks of parental leave. To recruit and retain the best and brightest, we must modernize the DoD's parental leave policy for members of the military. That's why I introduced the Service Member Parental Leave Equity Act to make sure that all primary and secondary caregivers in the military can access 12 weeks of paid parental leave. Mr. Vazirani, if confirmed, will you commit to prioritizing initiatives such as parental leave expansion that would help strengthen military readiness and better support military families?
Senator, if confirmed, I'd certainly commit to looking at any solution that would help military families and military family readiness.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony today, and I look forward to your confirmation. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Now let me recognize Senator Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today, folks. Mr. Vazirani, the uptick in military suicides is alarming, I think, to all of us. And the department's own figures show that 580 service members died by suicide in 2020. This means that the number of suicides increased by 15% from the prior year. Every single suicide, even one, is too many. And we need to do more to support our men and women in uniform. It was this concern that led me to introduce the Brandon Act, named for one of Arizona's fallen. We did this along with Senator Kramer and the support of other members of this committee. The bill is designed to ensure that a service member in crisis is never denied timely access to life-saving care. I also joined with Senator Ernst in introducing the Save Our Service Members Act to further improve the Defense Department's internal coordination on suicide prevention. It is clear that we need to do better. If confirmed, will you commit to work with us on these proposals?
Senator, I absolutely confirm to work with you on those proposals and look for options to reduce suicides and eliminate suicides to the degree that we can.
And what other strategies do you have for addressing, what are the strategies? So I'd like to listen to maybe some of your ideas on how we address this rising rate of suicides in the military.
Senator, I haven't formed a complete strategy on that. I certainly have some thoughts on this, primarily from the fact that I have a family that experienced 2 suicides. And so I think that, as the Secretary said, we have to reduce stigma. We have to make it okay for people to ask for help. And in order to ask for help, we have to have a command structure, whether it's at the squad level, the division level, the platoon level, the company level, where there's a connection between the service member and their leaders so that they know how to ask for help. And so that's one of the things we have to do. And so this is not only, in order to address this issue, which is so personal, we have to think about the system as well. And so we have to develop a system that enables help seeking. And we have to also acknowledge that part of that is to ensure that there are the same resources at home for the military family, because that stress source may be at home as well. And so we can't just look at it as just a military issue. It's a military family issue as well.
Well, the piece of that about, helping members ask for help and a process to do that is what the Brandon Act was all about. So thank you for your response. In my remaining time, I want to switch to Mr. Sherman for a second here, talk a little bit about cybersecurity and AI. With the SolarWinds and Colonial Pipeline ransomware attacks, Americans have had a front row seat on the havoc that cyber attacks can wreak on our country. We've also had a wake-up call to the vulnerabilities inherent in our infrastructure. And the Defense Department is not immune to these risks. In fact, the Defense Department identifies cybersecurity among its top priorities in its digital modernization strategy. This work is increasingly important as more and more of the equipment and technology we use to defend our nation comes to rely on the network and its security. If confirmed, what are your priorities for securing our defense networks against cyber attacks?
Senator, I absolutely agree that cybersecurity is of paramount concern, and if confirmed, to strengthen our cybersecurity, I would oversee the implementation of what's called zero trust, a strategy that assumes the enemy is already on the network, not protecting at the perimeter or defense in depth, but assuming they're already on our network, and through a strategy of what's called micro-segmentation, not only on our enterprise IT, sir, but also on things like industrial control systems. You referenced the Colonial Pipeline, things like HVAC, elevators, you name it, other things that make the enterprise run. So if confirmed, zero trust would be the approach I would oversee, sir.
And that approach is not used today?
Elements of zero trust are being implemented, building blocks for it. For example, the Defense Information System Agency is implementing it on the secret side. We need to scale it out much larger and also build on industry best practices.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Let me now recognize Senator Kane, who has additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Vazirani, this is just an observation that's directed at you because of your forthcoming role on personnel matters. We had a hearing about Afghanistan the other day, and it was an important hearing, and the administration witnesses talked about, in a somber way, the American troops lost in Afghanistan, 2,324 military personnel, as well as the 4,598 who died in Iraq. And we were talking about the toll that our nation suffered in the war on terror. One thing I've noticed in this testimony, and we've heard it before, is that the death of U.S. contractors is almost never mentioned. And it truly is a unique war, this war on terror, in American history, where the U.S. contractor deaths were higher than troop deaths. Total troop deaths in the war on terror were 7,052, but U.S. contractors, their deaths were 8,189. And I haven't yet kind of wrapped my mind around what that says about the notion of modern warfare, that there would be more casualties of contractors, many of whom were veterans. They had previously served in the military, than there were of active duty troops. And I think it's something that we need to think about and contemplate. But one thing that I would urge on the Pentagon going forward is, as we talk about U.S. lives lost in the war on terror, that we don't omit the U.S. contractors whose lives were lost. They may not have gotten some of the recognition that others did, and yet they lost their lives on a similar mission, usually under contract with the Pentagon. And we would be wise not to forget them, but to highlight their sacrifices as well. And so in your forthcoming role in personnel, I just wanted to urge you to have the Pentagon think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kane. Senator King, if you have no questions, thank you all for your not only service, which has been extraordinary, but your commitment to serve again. Your responses were compelling. I can't outdo the ranking member in his praise, so I will stop right there. And we look forward to bringing your confirmations to the floor as quickly as possible and getting you to work. Thank you all very much. With that, the hearing is adjourned.